Welcome to another week of NBL SuperCoach at the SC Hub. My name is Barnesy, here for another week for the NBL. And with us, we've got Chad, the Fantasy Phoenix, and of course, DVG, the still defending champion. Welcome, boys. Another week of NBL. Hope you're both well.
Yeah, been going all right. I'm making my way slowly up those rankings. Keep halving the rank each week, so we're doing well, but still a long way off where we want to be. But yeah, been going all right.
Yeah, going good, mate. Look, I haven't had a lot of luck this season so far with the Derek Walton Jr. captaincy early, and then I decided to trade in Adams last week and captain him. The week before. So I copped a couple of tough breaks there. This week, only managed to drop 161 rankings, but I was preparing myself that because I made a gigantic pod move on something to open up significant money in my cap for the next couple of weeks, and thankfully that has paid off. And so I think a couple of good weeks incoming.
Nice. Well, I ended up having a terrible week 2 weeks ago, so it was good that I wasn't on the podcast because I also had the Adams captaincy issue. So I went from 6 to 196. That was how bad that week was. Moved up to the 160s though this week, which is nice. I actually went for a pod move too. My one this week was Milton Doyle though, which kind of worked out okay. And it's probably a story of the round, really, isn't it, boys? It wasn't a high scoring round. We only had obviously the breakers and also the jack jumpers that were on the double game week. So there wasn't a huge amount of options. PJC was always the guy that everyone had to have and everyone had to captain. I think that was fairly universal across every content creator for NBL. So that was an easy one. But then after that, it got a bit murky. We did get 71 from Mooney, which I was surprised about, and then 65 from Doyle as the top three scorers. So I was pretty happy with Doyle. I think that the real pod option, though, to go for would have been Mooney. 71 points. He's gone up $20,000 this week, and he's now going to go into those double game weeks. I'm not sure what to make of it, so I'm interested in your opinions on last week. I wasn't big on Mooney going into the week. Like, I sort of thought it was a bit of a certainly a pod move, and certainly one that I think that teams could make. I just wasn't confident in the move. I thought it could have gone either way. But I thought both games he looked a lot better than what he had for the start of the season. So I guess it's sort of, if you own him, you're hoping that this is going to be the real Mooney and he's going to just continue kicking on with this with the double game weeks coming. Or Chad, maybe he really just was a flash in the pan on the weekend for a couple of games. Guys get hot sometimes, and he was the guy that we saw the first couple of weeks of the season, which was pretty average for the price point.
Yeah, it's a bit of a tough one. Even in the NBL, NBA games, I know that's obviously longer quarters, but he had one good game over there, but a lot of the other guys were sitting out. The only thing, Lopez wasn't playing, so that's someone else that might take that little bit of offensive punch when, he comes back in. The assist numbers were good for, being a scoring guard. He's doing more facilitating, which is nice to see for SuperCoach terms, but I don't know. I wasn't that big on him coming into the round, and I wouldn't probably be bringing him in, but if you hold him, you definitely laugh and you take that. Even if you can make some other moves and he can sit on your bench the next couple of weeks, that's still fine.
Yeah, and I mean DVG as well. There was some other guys that kind of broke out. I mean, it was the week of the 40s, really, wasn't it? Because we didn't have the double game weeks. If you went well, it was hitting those guys that were hitting the 40s. Anyone who held the Adelaide guys did really well. I was going to and then did not. Kendrick Davis 43, Harrell 43. And Davis actually could have gone a lot better. He had 3 turnovers in the last minute and a half of that game. He would have been 50s pretty easily. So, yeah, and then also my mate Pedro Bradshaw, who I started with too, he busted out with a 46-point game, and he was dead set lucky to score 20s half the time. So there was a few big plays like that kind of kept teams in it as well.
Yeah. Oh, look, it was one of those weeks. it really was a really weird week with those two teams being on that double game week, and you can see that there was a bunch of SuperCoach teams that went really hard, like those people who had held Magnay, from the early double. They obviously benefit. He didn't hit any crazy ceiling, but again, he punched out a 60. Look, Jordan Crawford had one decent game in that double. It was just, to be honest, with how bad Tassie sort of play, we're actually lucky to get those scores out of Magno, Doyle, and Crawford.
Lucky that Gang got
Other
41 too. He looked terrible yesterday
Oh
for the first
yeah,
three quarters.
yeah. Like again, like he's ended up being great for people, but he didn't look fantastic, but he still did the job. I think someone that has been flying a little bit under the radar is Christian Doolittle. He's been having had a cracking start to the season. Been playing really, really solid minutes for Perth, and obviously, we've now got a bit of a situation with Perth and Bryce Cotton with that injury, and if Doolittle was already playing sort of 34 minutes, we know John really hasn't sort of shied away from playing some of those guys really, really good minutes. Maybe Doolittle ends up being sort of what Cotton was last year, playing the level of minutes. So I think Doolittle's, his scores have been sensational, and looks like someone that we might all have to look at for Perth's upcoming run.
Yeah, and you raised a really interesting subplot from the weekend's games. The other thing that happened was obviously the Bryce Cotton news. I haven't seen anything new from NBL updates at the moment on the injury. There's nothing new about that. We'll probably find out 2 minutes after the first game starts the next round or something, because we don't get NBL updates very often. Look, the other guy that was all right on the weekend was Ty Webster. Like you mentioned, the Perth repercussions of Cotton going out. May as well talk about him now too. On the weekend, he scored 39 points, and at 198,000, he's quite cheap. So, I mean, I think everyone was sort of hoping that Pepper and Henshaw will benefit with Cotton being out, and he will be out sometime now. It's interesting with Webster that no one's really talked about him. He's not one of the guys that's being traded in at the moment. He threw up a 39, and he's probably going to benefit significantly. He looked better on the weekend too. What did you think about the backcourt rotation after Cotton went down a minute in, Chad?
They definitely were scrambling. You can tell. I mean, obviously, Cotton's been such a key focal point for that team for what are we up to? 8 years now. It is tough, especially with a couple of younger guys there, Henshaw and Pepper being the next sort of pieces. Webster, he did really, really well. It's hard to know if he's going to be able to keep doing that, though. Even when he first came back to the league, I think he was a DP before he went overseas. When he first came back for the Breakers, he was having some 40-point, obviously in the old format, some 40s and all that, playing really well. But then he'd drop off and just have nothing like what we've seen a bit earlier throughout this year. I don't know if he can be consistent. If he was someone really cheap you were getting to, even if it was like on the bench or something, maybe that's not a bad play for their 7 doubles in a row, whatever's coming up, or 5 from round 7, whatever it is. But yeah, I don't know if I could do it myself, even as a Ty Webster fan, but it's probably good news for a couple of guards that a lot of us may still have on our benches in Henshaw and Pepper, though. They should score better than they did over that game. Obviously, Henshaw played really well, but had a bunch of turnovers that really capped that score. It's going to be interesting how they go. Just quickly touching on Doolittle, he's probably going to play those big minutes, but even in those games this week, seeing him pretty spent, he called for a sub a couple of times. I think once he got pushed back that he couldn't come off. So hopefully he can still keep up the consistency. But if we've got the Doolittle from the last 8 to 10 weeks of last year, then he's very, very much someone we need to look at.
Well, we need to talk about the schedule quickly and then go into trading for the week. Before we do, it's probably a good little strategy segue. DVG, you are a king strategist. You need to have that to be able to be a champion. I am wondering this week when I looked at it, I've got so much of my roster on a double game week this week. And I sort of looked at it and went, well, is this a good week to strategize if you've got a lot of double game week guys to actually start planning for the weeks after that? Because someone like Doolittle, for instance, has a 7 break even and not a double game week guy, but he's going to be significantly more expensive in 2 weeks' time. And if you've already got 6 or 7 double game week guys, which is really easy to have, then maybe getting ahead of the curve by saying, look, one of my trades is actually going to be for the future, but also to save money now and still get a decent score this round. Do you think that might be an okay strategy for some team builds that have already got the double game weeks in their side?
Yeah, I do. Look, truth be told, that's what I'm doing. I'm bringing Doolittle in this week.
Yeah, I picked you
And
straight away, mate. See?
yeah, no, like, and again, if I'd had a better start to the year and my cash generation was better, I might not be making decisions like this, but I have to start doing things differently in order to get ahead of cash curves and all that sort of stuff. And I've actually looked at Doolittle for the last 3 or 4 weeks, and he's played his minutes. He's now gone 32, 39, 32, 39, 36, and 37 minutes. His SuperCoach scores are 32, 27, 18, 42, 44, and 43. If you're going to be playing those sort of minutes and you've got that level of talent, I'm not expecting him to score 40s. Like I'm not expecting him to hit double doubles every week. But, if we can get him playing those minutes, I would be thinking that at worst you should be scoring, your 25, 30s. And with them having 5, double game weeks in a row coming up, I just was like, look, he's obviously going to rise for more money this week. I've got a bunch of money. I mentioned at the start of the show, I made a bit of a pod move. I brought in Max Darling this week from the Breakers. I was very well aware of how many double game weeks the Breakers had. I noticed that Max Darling had been in the starting side. And yeah, look, crazy move, but I wanted a cheap piece. And after some chats with a very good friend of mine, Dasher, in the lead up to the game, I made that decision, and thankfully that has paid off, and it opened up about $200,000 of cap space for me in my team. So I've got about 8 double game week players. I'm like, look, now that I've got that money and that space, I'm going to do another pod move, and I'm going to go early on Doolittle.
Nice. Yep. I definitely think it's an option. The doubles this week, now we've obviously come from a 2 double game week, and now we're going to go on a 6-1. So it's going to be really high scoring. Important to take advantage of that. So certainly I think that the strategy that we just talked about is variable. You can do it with certain team builds. If you don't have enough quality double game week guys, though, you can't. We've got the Kings, we've got Sam, got New Zealand Breakers, United, Hawks, and Cairns, all with a double game week. It's going to be high scoring. And more importantly, the following week is going to be high scoring too, because we've got another 6 double game week teams then. The 2 teams for me, boys, when I'm looking this week, and again, you can go other teams, but if you can't decide, to me, you're going for the Melbourne guys. You're going for United or Sem, because they've got the 3 double game weeks in a row now, whereas everyone else at best only has 2 or 1. So they look like the premium guys, because if you can set yourself up now with these trades, where not just this week you got all those double game weeks, but for the next 3 weeks, like the advantage of it is, and I've had people ask me this when we've chatted and stuff for advice on tradings that they were doing and things. The advantage of it is that you can get another double game week guy in on top of who everyone else can get in say 2 weeks time, because someone's going to have a 2 week or 1 week guy drop off next week or the following week and just replace them with a double game week, whereas you're going to have that double game week and then pop another one on top. It's a really easy way to build points and to make up rank. And I think that it's really important, if you're chasing, to focus on those Salmon United guys for the next few weeks.
Yeah, that's probably a fair call, especially when there could be some injury chaos that might create a bit of opportunity for us to pick up some discounted guys. So if we look at Sam, if Derek Walton Jr. has done that hamstring, his running mate in Sobey dropped a little bit of cash. He's under 250. He's someone that you could look to downgrade to at the guard spot. Obviously, Matt Hurt is a great option from the Phoenix too. I don't know if I could go to a Glover after being burnt a little bit earlier in the year by him, but he's also someone that had a great uptick when Walton Jr. went off. And with United, speaking of injuries, we don't know what's happening yet. Confirmation about Shaylee's calf. If he's going to miss this round too, Delhi's a fantastic option. There's definitely a lot of pieces that we can be looking at from those teams.
Yeah, and look, DVG, we may as well go into the top traded ones, because we've started to segue pretty nicely, because you guys are just professionals. Matt Hurt, number 1 most traded in player. He's $367,000. Now, I was super keen on Matt Hurt a few weeks ago, and I still really like what I've seen. They're obviously down now with Walton possibly out too, but DVG, I'm a little bit scared. So I need you to maybe talk me into it. It's a lot of money. He's got 3 weeks in a row, but he just seems to do really consistent good scores. A little bit like a Harrell, but I just don't see many 45s, 50s in him. And that worries me a little bit that maybe I'm just going to get a solid 60 double game round or even a 60 sort of 3 average for 3 weeks, which is nice. But when you're paying almost 400K, it could be a little bit problematic. So I think he's a good buy. I thought he was probably a better buy at 2 weeks ago price point.
Look, he's doing all the things right. Like, his SuperCoach scores 38, 40, 25, 42, 34 and 32. I mean, you can't ask for much more, right? If he was to continue doing that, it's on all these double game week stretches. That's that's realistically, like, that's what we're after, right? We're after that consistency, and he's only gone under 30 once. So I mean, that's amazing.
I could ask for more. I'm very greedy. I want
I
50.
get it. I get it. I get it. Look, I guess the thing that if I worry about it from him is that he is very points orientated. Like,
Yeah.
I look at his, I know he's got a rebound in him, but like from assists, like he looks like he's averaging what, under 2? No, he'd be averaging about 2 assists per game. Doesn't do a lot of blocks. Hasn't got a huge amount of steals in him. Like, all of a sudden, if his shooting percentage was to dip regularly, sort of under that 50%, that's when all of a sudden, like, we might be falling in trouble. Like, it's not like he's stacking, the stat sheet sort of everywhere. When someone's going as hot like this, it's hard to argue not bring him in. If I wasn't set on doing Doolittle, he is 100% the piece I'd be bringing in, because you've mentioned it. They've got the 3 sort of game weeks in a row. Like, a bit of a change of scenery now that the coach has moved on. Like, it's all there for people to sort of bring him in and benefit in. It's just that's the thing that I hesitate with, is just that he seems to be very points orientated when he's scoring. So
Yeah, and Chad, he's got the Breakers to start with, which I actually think is a good matchup for him, but it is in New Zealand, which kind of takes the shine off a little bit. But then they are at home, but they've got Illawarra, and we know how tough Illawarra can be at times. Your Hawks, pretty good front line for him to go against with Days and Froling there as well. So it's a bit of a mixed bag. I think he'll throw up a 35 versus New Zealand probably, but he might struggle a little bit more in that second one as well. So, I mean, I think that we've summed it up pretty well for him. I do like him. I do think he's good. Are you going to bring him in this week as well, Chad?
Potentially. He's probably the most likely, but the other issue that I have is someone who we'll talk about a little bit down the list. I don't have him either, and he's a little bit more expensive, and I would rather have him. So if I can only get one, I'd probably bring in Cooks, but the thing with Hurt is he pairs nicely. So if you bring him in, he's got those 3 doubles in a row, and then the next week is when Brisbane start their run. So you can go Hurt straight to a Tyrell Harrison or a Josh Bannon if he's playing really well. So that's a piece that I've thought about. If I bring him in, I can sit him there and can just shift straight away. So undecided, potential boost to maybe bring them both in, but I definitely like him as a trade-in.
Very hard to own Cooks and Hurt because both of them
Yeah.
are that 370 to 400K mark, and that's tough to fit into your side. So if you've got both of them, it's a huge advantage. Now, I'm probably going to run without Cooks myself, or maybe I'll run without Hurt. I haven't decided yet. Very tough. Speaking of Cooks, he's obviously a big trade-in. He's killing it. I do like to talk both sides of the argument, though. Now, if I'm going to bet on him, I'm going to bet on him to be one of the top options still for the season. But there is a couple of little things there that could go against him. So I'm going to throw it out there as a Kings fan. The Kings don't look good. That's the first thing. They were awful the last game on the weekend. I just killed my weekend having to watch that. The other thing with that game that we saw, Oliver only played 10 minutes in the first half, and Oliver has been disappointing lately. He's got to play more. And for them, they were struggling for offense, and they still weren't getting Oliver enough minutes. And then Adams obviously started off the bench and was hurt the week before. So I don't think it has been coincidence that Cooks has exploded the last couple of weeks more so than what he already was in point scoring, while Adams has been out entirely and then, injured, and then Cam Oliver has been disappointing in not getting the minutes. I tend to think that there is a chance that turns around a little bit.
Yeah, I'll let you jump in for this one, Dave.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start by saying I hate the fact I'm not a Cooks owner, because I could have made the decision last week or 2 weeks ago between Adam and Cooks, and obviously went the wrong way. He's just been so consistent. That's the thing. Like he hasn't really got underneath that. He hasn't really gone underneath that. Has he scored under 30 yet? I don't think he has.
No, he hasn't. And that's the thing. Like, if we're all going to death ride him, and I'm happy to jump on your trade and do that, mate. But if we are, you're death riding him to get a 34, something like
Yeah,
he's still going to be good, right?
Yeah, that and again, there's, in my mind, if you've got the money up in that section, like for this little run where you've got a couple of those teams that are on the 2 double game weeks, and then the 3s, or that big stretch of the 4, like Cooks is a no-brainer. I think Hertz is really, really, really close to him. I know Doolittle's double game week isn't here, but then the difference is he's got 5 afterwards. But I think those are the 3 real big dog options that. And I mean, part of me is just like, okay, should I just go Cooks? Because his average is just like so there, and just not sort of worry about that cash that I'm missing out on Doolittle and just getting more expensive. And that's a valid decision that a lot of people are going to potentially have with it. But I'm sort of the same. I'm just like, can you keep up with this pace? And with Sydney, there's been a couple of games. Sydney have looked like world beaters in a couple of those games early on, but the last few games, they've been hugely disappointing. And I'm actually, it was a bit of a rabble, that game on the weekend. They got it done, but it was just a rabble. That's all. So
it's going to really, I don't want to say define the end of Gorge's coaching career, which is what I was going to say. Probably a bit harsh, but certainly it's an interesting test for him at this stage of his coaching career, where he's going to go now, because that team needs to make adjustments, and it needs to make them now. And that was very clear on the weekend, and he still didn't do it. Their draw, though, I've sort of tried to death ride him a little bit, but the Cooks draw is very good. So if the Kings are going to bounce back this week, they've got to travel to Perth, which is tough, but it's going to be Perth without Cotton. That's much easier. And then they're going to have a home game versus the Warriors. It's not the NRL. It's going to be the Breakers. The Warriors Kings would be far more interesting, perhaps. But Breakers Kings, yeah, would have gone well.
Oh, God.
Yeah, I just think that it's such a good matchup for them as well. I'm not a big Breakers believer, and I do think that the travel gets to them normally, but with the travel off the back of coming back from the States a week ago, so it looks good for the Kings on the draw. And that's probably the big selling point that I'd have on Cooks over Hurt, is I'm much more confident if I throw the C on Cooks, even if he has a bad week, he's getting a 70, whereas you could get a 60 off Hurt pretty easily, or even a 55 if it's a real bad week. The floor of Cooks is better, and he's got a better draw. So to me, that's what sold me on it. There's obviously some other big dog options this round as well. Jack White is going to be the other one, and he only scored a paltry 19 on the weekend. He should have got a double-double, boys. He was so close to it, and he just shot terribly. I think he shot like 25% and just had a couple of bad turnovers as well. He's got a 74 break even now at $347 a thousand. I think that a lot of people were looking towards this week going, I've got to try and scramble to be able to afford Jack White to come back. I actually held him, and I wish it was more of a masterstroke than what it's looking. But unfortunately, he had a bad week, and he's now not that expensive compared to the other premium options, and he's got a really big break even. Could you afford just to pass on White? He's going to be, less expensive next week. Maybe the key is if you can only get one premium guy, or even two, and you can get Hurt and Cooks in, they're the way to go. And if you can get Jack White next week, you go for it later on.
Well, I'm
Chad,
the same.
how are you feeling?
Yeah, I held him through. He was someone that obviously was very big, like a lot of people, with starting him. And nearly every time they've had the double, I've had him as the captaincy option, which he has shown in a couple of those. Still very happy to have held him. I think you are right in terms of this time of year, and especially as they brought up before, with some cash gen being issue for a lot of us that had some things not quite go our way. Bringing in a Jack White who He'll probably get towards that or maybe just beat. He'll be around that mark. But he's not going to go up a lot. Whereas I think Hurt's a little bit better. His is in the 60s, his break even. Cooks has got that really good ceiling, or you go that Doolittle route. I think there's probably those other options there. I probably agree with you, but I would also not be surprised if he's the top scorer, or at least in the top 2 or 3 this week and for the next 2 weeks after.
Yeah, DVG, he's got the tough one of the Illawarra road trip to start with too. So he has to travel to the Snake Pit and play Illawarra. And then after that, Melbourne United have got Cairns at home to finish off the round. He can go a lot better there. But it's certainly not a great round for the Melbourne United draw.
Yeah. Look, I'm like you guys. I held him. Really, really was hoping he had a better score. But I do have a lot of confidence that he'll play better. And I watched a good portion of that Melbourne SEM thing, and Melbourne just was so poor. Like that, Melbourne was so poor. And I don't know if it's a theme, but the 2 games that I've seen United lose, the one that they lost earlier in the year to Tassie, and then that one, part of the factors behind both of those losses, in my view, was that both games, they just seemed hell-bent on getting in fights with the opposition team. If you remember that the United Tassie game, they literally came out and tried to start fights. That's from the minute. I'm sitting there going after a couple minutes, what are you guys doing? And then this is exactly what happened. Goulding came out.
Absolutely
And
warmed
Goulding
my
was
heart.
not.
Loved it.
Yeah. I can't stand Goulding. He's up there with one of my. I probably shouldn't say this on post, but I just wish he'd play basketball. And if he plays basketball, United probably go close to winning. Instead, he just wanted to keep being a dramatist. My broken arm, in a thing. Just play the game, and United stay on track, and they probably win that. They were in control, and they just lost it for that. And I hope Vickerman sticks it to them, because they're a bunch of crybabies when they crap on like that. Not frustrated.
No, let it all out. It's what we're here for.
Yeah.
I'm glad I held him, but I do think that he's behind the other premium options. Now, we sort of said, these other few guys are the premium options of the round. We forgot the little blokes in the game of the NBL, and they're the ones that score the most points each year, and that's the guards. People are still bringing in Parker Jackson Cartwright. Sorry. If you don't have PJC, I want to say he's a must-have, boys, but last week was the week to do it. You're paying $23,000 more, so now he's almost $450,000. It's a very big purchase price. He's now the most expensive player in the SuperCoach game for NBL. I think that's the only thing that stops me from going. He's 100% a must-have. You have to do it, but he's pretty close to it. And we talked about guys like Cooks being a safe option for your captaincy this week and stuff. Like New Zealand have got Sam in New Zealand. Probably no Walton Jr. as well. That's gold. Away for the Kings is hard, but you'd be hard pressed to take the C off him this round. So it's a purchase and captaincy option. If you don't have him, Chad, is he a must? Do you have to get him in as your number 1 priority this week?
It's a tough call because, like you said, he was beyond a must-have last week. So for those coaches that don't have him, it's almost like do you just back in your call to fade him and hope that he gets really locked down against Bullquall this week, and you've got your options, whether you've got a Cooks and if Jalen Adams is back, or you're going one of the other stronger guard options, you hope that they do well. I don't know. He's obviously one of the best SuperCoach players. He's got that great game. He can score. He facilitates so well. He picks up steals. The amount of just, reaching into the cookie jar, but he actually comes out with the cookies. He's just really good on that defensive end for those stats for us too. So I would be very scared again if I didn't own him, but almost, you might have to back yourself in to try and continue with that fade. They only have the 2 more doubles before a couple of singles, but he is someone you're going to want for the rest of the year with the best schedule from now until the end.
We spoke about his teammate Mooney, and 300,000 now, and I just couldn't do it at the price point. There's just too many other options. If you got on him last week, he did really well, but when you DVG, to me, you look at NRL or AFL. And there's always the classic chasing last week's points, and it happens a lot more in those codes than what it does in NBL. But to me, this is a classic example. You get these guys that are going to bust out, have a really good week, and everyone just jumps on, despite the fact they haven't shown that much before that. And he's priced at a premium option in a week where there is a million premium options. that are all better than him. So if you got lucky last week, it's perfect. That's exactly what you want to do. Get on those big points before anybody else does. But the other thing that you don't want to do, the opposite end of the spectrum, is you don't want to jump on after everyone else has got those points already, because the likelihood that he repeats last week, based on his form so far that we've seen in his NBL career, is fairly slim compared to other consistent options.
Look, I definitely understand all the negatives against it. I like just flipping the switch and going on the pros, right? He's got his break even for this double game week, I think, is only at about 27 or 28. Is that right?
He's at 36.
Oh, 36. Okay, that's higher than what I thought. I guess I look at the break evens of some of those other premium guards, like Jalen Adams. His break even must be pretty solid. Like it must be over 60, I would have thought, for it. And I guess I just look at that and say, okay, you're both on a double. One bloke's 30K cheaper. You both got two games in a row. One bloke's 30K cheaper and his BE is half of what the other one is. I also look at his load. Now, we understand that he shot very well, particularly in that last game, right? He had 28 points. But he does do a little bit of everything. So in these 4 games, steal-wise, he's had 2 steals, 4 steals, 1 steal, and 3 steals. He's also averaged a little over 3 assists per game. He doesn't do a lot of rebounding. I get it. There is a fair portion of his stuff that comes from points, but I think those biggest thing is from those steals. Like it doesn't seem like it's a fluke from a steal point of view. Like he has got at least a steal a game. So I'm not as off on the idea of not bringing him in as last week. And there's 2 factors. Obviously, the fact that there's 2 double game weeks. We talk about that price point and we talk about what his BE is compared to some of those other players that might have a better ceiling. But if we're talking about trying to get doubles and potentially make some money, it might be there. Like his scores of SC scores so far are 26, 24, 29, and 42. Like if he was to go back to back 24s, which is his floor so far this season, you're going to actually hit your price point of 300. You are going to make money. And what's to say Adams doesn't, like Adams might only hit 60 himself on the double. So for 30K cheaper and the money on the board there, I don't think there's I don't think it's all a negative story for him.
No, it's not all negative. He could continue it. And I think if this was last week again in the schedule wise, I'd be more confident.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just that there's so much competition with 6 double game week guys. Do you really want to take that risk? And we haven't talked about all these other guys that we're going to talk about real quickly. They're the unpopular options as far as premiums go. Nobody wants the bar of Cairns, but they're on a double game week. And I would be remiss if I didn't bring up the greatest player in NBL history in Sam Wardenberg. He's the last 3 games, he's averaging 35 points a game, and he's 300K, and he's a dual center forward option. And no one will bring him in because he's on a single double game week. But if you've already got all those doubles, I don't see why you don't consider some of these Cairn guys. Even a Bradshaw coming off a 46-point single game, has he found his groove? And then we have these other options that no one's looking at. We haven't even spoken about. Poor Chad, he's over there going, when are you going to talk about the Hawks?
That's it.
We've got Froling here on a double game week. We've got Days on a double game week who's been absolutely killing it. That shows just how many options that there are this week, because these guys are all premium top of the range options, and they didn't even rate into a top half a dozen guys that we reckon for this week. So, Chad, Cairns, your Hawks, should we still be looking at them even though they don't have those 2 or 3 weeks in a row here of double game week?
I'll probably say no on Cairns purely with the question marks of Taron Armstrong. If you've got him though, you can still hold them. Like I have Edwards, and I may still be holding on to him for this double. But the Hawks, I mean, what have we got? We got the best team in the league. We've got some of the best players. But in all seriousness though, there is a very smoky option from the Hawks for a captaincy piece. Trey Kell, if you're looking at a premium guard, he's with the matchups too. I think if there's no Shea Illy for Melbourne and it's just Delhi, I think Kell being that bigger guard, and with a lot of pieces that Delhi's going to have to scramble to try and guard, I think he'll have a great game against them. And who is the second game? I'm forgetting who the second. It's away. Oh, Sam, of course. So he's playing his old team that's got no great defensive stats. Those people, or the one defensive guy that they brought in hasn't seen any minutes. So Yeah, I think that Kell is a great option. It's tough just with the schedules. You know, we've got, as you mentioned earlier, Barnesy, you've got United and Sam, they've got 3 doubles in a row. New Zealand and the Kings, they've got back-to-backs. And we've got Perth starting next week with, if he's back from injury and fully fit, the best player in the league as a guard spot. So you could go maybe the 1-week rental and shift across to a downgrade to a Cotton next week if he's back. But I don't know about the bigs. Maybe not Froling days. Maybe he'll want to bounce back from his poor game. But yeah, I think Kell is the best Hawks option if you wanted to go the smoky from them.
I love the Kel pod pick. I think he could kill it this week. And the beauty of it too is that it's hard to bring him in because look, DVG, we've got all these guard options. You know, I haven't even mentioned Jalen Adams. He was the flavor of the week till he got hurt. He's playing 2 games too, and he's only 330k. You know, he's pretty attainable. And the other one I'll throw at you too is we've got Matthew Dellavedova there at 300k.
Yeah.
And everyone forgot about him just because he had a kid. It's he's back now. The baby's sleeping and feeding enough for him to get to practice at least, and he's playing, and he might be playing without a Shea Illy. So Chad just spoke about the extra responsibility that Delhi's going to have. He's only $303,000 on 3 double game weeks in a row now. So there's another one to throw at you with those other ones.
Yeah, absolutely. Delhi is 100% an option with those 3 double game weeks in a row, and potentially Illy not there for let's say this first weekend. He's still got it. He's becoming one of the older stages of the NBL, but he can still do what he does. He has great assists in him to a couple of those big men in the United outfit, and again when United aren't focused on fighting, they're such a good team. So Delhi can really turn it on. We just hope it's not fight night next week when they play.
Yeah, there's some really good pod options. This is going to be a big moving week, and I think that's what people should think about when they're buying their guns. This is a week where it's going to be really, really different teams getting wheeled out everywhere because there is so many options. So if you've saved your boosts and you've only used like 1, or even if you only used 2, and you really need to move ahead in the rankings and you're falling behind, this is a week to go all guns blazing and get aggressive because there is just so many options that other people aren't going to have. The team of the week for this week is going to be totally different to the teams that finish probably 2nd and 3rd and 4th. They're all going to be such different combinations and so many different options. There's all these cut price guys this week, everyone. So we've got cheapy to mid-range options through the roof. Max Darling's the second most popular guy. I have to just give it away to DVG just to talk about it because he actually brought him in a week early and made $22,000 before any of us could even think about him. I had to look up whether he played basketball. I wasn't sure what format he was for, but it's 22,000 only brings him up to 91k. So he all of a sudden is a forward at 91k. I know for my teammate that I'm going to have to do a downgrade somewhere to do an upgrade elsewhere. And he's got a break even at 3 and coming off a really good week. So what did you see in him and how do you see him as being the second most popular option this week for trades?
Look, I think if you look at the highlights of that last game, you'll see all you're going to need to see. Look, I think the hardest thing is that he really hadn't shown a lot of that previous stat, but I think it's just because New Zealand were doing different things in the other games. Like, I think that he actually, there was a couple of things he did in those other couple of games when I was looking at the replays where, there was a couple of blocks he had which ended up being, turning fouls. And I was sitting there thinking to myself, okay, well, let's say that those weren't, and one was a bit of a questionable one in that first game. I was like, okay, so his SC score all of a sudden isn't a 3. Like, it's a potentially a 6 or 9. And I was sitting there going, okay, maybe, there is something there. And then all of a sudden he come out and starts doing everything in that first quarter. And part of the reason that I ended up agreeing with my good mate Dasher, who called me sort of before the game, look, they're not starting him for no reason. So they're obviously went, okay, well, they're giving him the starting gig for some reason. So there must be something that coaching staff have seen in him to give the trust of the starting. So I was like, look, 69,000. You were playing the start. Let's open up some cash and have a play with him. And thankfully, he's done that. And with that score of 27 in his rolling average, hopefully there's a little bit of cash there. Look, it's one of those things. It's great that they've got 2 doubles in a row. That really helps. I wouldn't be sitting there thinking that it's going to be like a Lepepe move or a Robertson move. Like, I think we've got to temper our expectations quite heavily. But if you need cash and you want someone that's going to be cheap on the doubles, like, it's not a bad option.
There is some other cheap guys. I mean, I think that Darling's going head-to-head with Glover, and it's surprising that we're talking about that. But, I mean, Sam's got some injuries. Glover has looked much better lately, and they've got a coaching change as well, which I think is going to benefit him. And playing New Zealand first up, Chad, is pretty good. He went up 21K just this week, but 101,000, that's still that real cheap price tag. But more importantly, he's one of the few guys that has a negative break-even. Despite Darling being a 3 break-even and only 91,000, 101,000, but -4 break even for Glover. Looks very appealing. I'd like to see some more info on Walton. If Walton's out multiple weeks or something, all of a sudden you've got some guard minutes that are going to open up for Glover for a couple of weeks on 2 double game weeks, and that's just golden. So it's hard to lean either way. Are you getting either of these guys, Chad, or which way are you leaning on them if you had to choose one of them?
I don't know if I'll get either. If I remove previous bias, I'd be taking Glover. Obviously, he's got that extra double. Like you said, he's got the negative break even, and he's shown he can do it. Obviously, he hasn't had the best of years, especially shooting wise, but he's shown that he can put up some semi-consistent scores in the past. If I had to pick one, it would probably be him. But the other question mark is obviously Sam McKinnon was coaching this weekend just gone, but the news is that they've already hired their guy and he's on their way. So does he coach this week and then rotations get thrown around? He likes someone else at practice. He looks and Ben Ayre's doing really well at practice. He prefers him, and then Glover doesn't get much opportunity. It's a bit of a question mark, but the biggest thing, as you said, is what's happening with Derek Walton Jr. I think, if I'm picking, I'm going to go Glover just for the extra opportunity for the extra week. But if the real big time players make big time plays, brought in Max Darling last week. So if if you did what Dave did, then you're fine. But yeah, I don't know. It's going to be tough. Is he going to hit 3 corner threes in a row each game?
No.
I don't know. He can tick along, but yeah, I'd probably go Glover of the two.
Well, 3 weeks ago, the guy that I like better than either of them was Malik Lewis, and he's priced himself out of my consideration. I'm really, to be polite about it, extremely annoyed. I was going to start swearing then. Malik Lewis 3 weeks ago, I was like, got him on my list. He's starting to look good. I think he's adjusting to the NBL, and I really like the eye test. And all of a sudden, he's putting up some blocks and threes and steals. That's sign me up. And now he's gone up another 22,000. Oh, sorry, 28,000 this week, and already risen 35K on his starting price, and he's over 150,000. I was hoping to get him sub 120, preferably towards the 100K mark. He's now become a bit more expensive for me, but I mean, in saying that, he's a young guy. He's a next star. He's only got a 15 BE. He's starting now. He's the type of guy that I think a new coach would want to keep starting as a young piece, and they're already losing, and he's putting in a fair bit of versatility on the court. So maybe he's good value at 150K, but he's going head-to-head with Sam Menenga. Now, Menenga, you think that he's starting for a reason. I didn't see it last week, and I bought him and felt bad about it all weekend. He should have done a lot better. One of the saving graces is they're both 150K, but even for Menenga at New Zealand, I don't think they've got a lot of options, and that helps save him, whether he can make anything of it. I tend to think that now, if I'm going into this week and I don't own any of these cheapy to mid-range guys, DVG, I'm going for the cheaper guys in the 90 to 100K mark, Glover or Darling, instead of paying this extra money for a Lewis or a Menenga.
Yeah, I think so. Look, I think with the Glover thing, right, Derek Walton Jr., that would be excellent, right, if he's out. But, he still played. I know there was a game where he played 12 minutes, but I think most games he's played anywhere between sort of that 14 to 20 minutes. So there's 2 games he's played 22 to 23. Like you guys mentioned how poorly he's shooting. Surely there's got to be some positive regression there. Like his career, he's shooting at 44%. Like this year, he must be shooting sub 30. Yeah, he's shooting sub 30 this year. Like he surely has to improve that at some point. And I think at the negative break even at that price point with 3 doubles in a row, I think he's probably your dart throw. If you got to pick one of them, just because we have to expect improved shooting shortly, and if Derek Walton Jr. out, it's just more of a icing on the cake for that. So
I just want to throw a guy out the window that we mentioned earlier that might benefit because people will ask about it, and then we'll move on to quickly picking our captaincy options and wrapping up. Nathan Sobey, obviously, if Walton Jr.'s out, he's going to benefit. 256,000, cheaper than his starting price by a long ways. But to me, it's not cheap enough, boys. I want him at 200,000 because I'm just not confident enough. And I'll just say bluntly, I just don't think he's very good anymore. And his shooting's just not. He had it. It was either the weekend or the weekend before. I already had a cross through his name, and I'm going to put another cross through it forever because he threw out this 3, and it was a bad shot anyway. And it like one of those ones where like you're playing Monday Night Basketball, 18th grade up the road, and some guy fills in that's never played before and just throws up that brick that almost shatters the backboard and doesn't hit the ring. It just came straight off the backboard and came off and didn't even touch ring, net, anything. And I was just like, man, you are so far away from being effective for this team or for SuperCoach. And the minutes is what really scared me, right? So I looked at the numbers and I'm like, well, if Walton Jr.'s out, what's the opportunity for the minutes with his PPM and stuff? These are his minutes for the year: 30 minutes, 24 minutes, 30 minutes, 33 minutes, 22 minutes, 27 minutes. He hasn't been playing low minutes. It's averaged out to mid to late 20s in his minutes per game. How much more is that really going to go up? Maybe 30, maybe he gets an extra 2 minutes. What's that, an extra 1.5 on his PPM or something? He's just not going to really benefit that much unless he starts hitting shots. And he's already taken heaps of usage as it is. So he's not a guy that's going to distribute because Walton's not there. He's not a guy that's going to grab steals and defend. He's still all about his scoring and his shooting, and that's not been very good. So I'm just pretty against getting him. But Chad, DVG, can you give anything for Sobey here?
Oh, I reckon he's still got a bit to prove. I agree with you
after the first 4 weeks.
And that, you're talking about the one game he made that brick shot. You could be talking about any of his games for the last 12 months, but it's, I don't know. I liked him with that injury. I thought, okay, this could be something. And he actually finished the game not too badly, which is ironic because I wanted him to do poorly so it'd be even cheaper. But seeing him do well, it was something that I thought, okay, around that 250 mark, if you're going I probably wouldn't do it this week with his form the last couple of weeks. But if you're doing like a bench, you move in Hickey or something to someone like a Sobey, I don't think that's a terrible play. Or I've even toyed going Rob Edwards down to Sobey for a little bit of cash as my downgrade to fund the other move. So I don't hate it, but it is one of the riskier options. If Derek Walton Jr. is playing, though, I think you just put a line through him. But if he's going to miss at least, say, maybe 2 weeks, with that, I think it was hamstring, not calf, then I'd be having a pretty serious look at it for a bit of a pod play.
Did you guys see the press conference afterwards?
I haven't watched the conferences yet. No.
It's like Sam McKinnon was hilarious in the press conference. So they brought up about Sobey, and he was like, "Look, I've known Sobey a really long time. We've got a really good relationship, and I'm pretty sure I know like what's best for him." And basically had a pretty frank conversation with him this week, and just told him to cut the bullshit. And it was something along those lines. And he's just like, I know what's best for him. What's best for him is to not facilitate the ball, just other people create space, and then whatever. And I don't think it's a coincidence that Sobey then had his best game probably for the year after, having someone maybe who knows him well, do with that. Again, if Sam McKinnon, after hearing that interview, Sam McKinnon was going to be the guy, going to be the coach, I may have actually reconsidered because I was like, okay, the way that you did that, you were really pointed with the way that you said that in the press conference. I was like, okay, that's really good. The new coach coming in, not 100% sure, and it also doesn't help. I just, it's like Goulding. I just don't like Sobes. So
yeah, well, look, the problem is 260,000. I would say that there is a chance that he both improves significantly on how he's played the next fortnight and also still loses money. Yeah. So it's just such a bad combination with his price point. Look, the trade-outs we're not really going to go through because everyone being traded out makes some sense for different teams. I think Lepepe is probably the best one to catch out of at the moment with the break even. and 38 double game week. It makes sense. Some other guys, yeah, but we'll move on and just talk about captaincy options quickly. Chad, you first. Top 3 captaincy options for this week to round us out.
We're probably going to have some similar, but I'll go with Xavier Cooks. I'll throw in who I brought up before, Trey Kell, and we'll go PJC as well to round it out.
Nice. DVG, captaincies.
I think Peter Jackson Cartwright's got to be on top. I'm going to say Matt Hurt for second, and a bit of a pod play to come back after his poor week, Jack White.
Yeah, nice.
Big. I like PJC and Cooks as the 2 consistent, probably premium options. I'll throw a complete smoky out there. I'm going to throw up Jalen Adams if you want an absolute pod play just to chase, provided that we know that he's trained strongly all week, in which case you'll probably have to be sitting at the Old Kingdom and I'm watching every single practice because no one will tell you about it. But provided that we know and that he's going to start, then he could be a smoky one for this week. But I would say that there's probably 10 good options this week, which is why it's such an exciting week in NBL, isn't it? Boys, thanks very much for coming on and jumping on SC Hub. Chad, you can follow the Fantasy Phoenix. Thank you very much. Good luck for the week.
No, thank you. Been a pleasure as always, guys.
And DVG, they're still defending champion. You can follow him as well. Got some great advice as well. Good luck for the week, mate, and your chase to pull up the ranks with some different strategies.
Thanks, boys. Have a good week.
Everybody out there, make sure you do follow the SC Hub on all the socials, and also make sure that you jump on Discord as well. It's a great community there. You get heaps of help with any questions and things that you have, and also the leagues. They're going fantastic. Some of the top leagues overall in NBL Supercoach are SC Hub leagues, so that's great to be a part of as well. Thanks for tuning in. You can find us on YouTube and everywhere else if you just want to listen. And next week, the boys will be back as well from the SC Hub to give you an extra week. So good luck with your trades. Good luck with the NBL this week. Hopefully we get some good games and talk again real soon.